mix some votes on this. How many people say it's, you got easy, medium, or hard? Easy. No one. Okay. Medium. Okay. Like a fourth of us. Hard. Okay. Almost all, everyone else. Very hard. I know I didn't give you that option, but okay. So some of us. All right. Well, this is definitely an ordering game. Are we all okay with that? So we're just trying to order these things. Notice too that this is test 52 game 4. Not surprising that it's hard because it's coming at the end of the section. Again, the last game is not always the hardest game, but it tends to be one of the harder ones. This one's definitely hard. G is earlier than K, but later than F. So G is earlier than K, but later than F. So FGK. There's really two rules in that sentence if you're getting mixed up. Or if you flipped any of this around, then you want to do one rule at a time, even though it's one sentence. Next rule. H is earlier than G. Well, this links into here, so I'm going to go ahead and note this, right? So this is saying that F and H come before G and G comes before K. By linking them together, you now know that all three of those variables come before K. So far, so good? So takeaway here is if you can link rules together as you go, do so. Now, I'm going to do something, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. I'm going to do something that's kind of advanced, but it's extremely helpful in my opinion. So hold on to your seats, and if you don't like what I'm doing, just tell me, and we'll stop, and we'll rewind, and we'll do this until you get it, because if you can get this, it changes things quite dramatically, I think. Rule number 3 says, if F's delivery is earlier than M's. Now, I'm going to write this rule down so that we're all on the same page, but I actually would not write this rule down on the test. First of all, we just have to get our minds wrapped around this rule. If F is earlier than M, if F is before M, then I'm going to use an arrow for if then, right? If this happens, then something happens. L is earlier than H. Now, are we okay with the rule itself? Because now we're going to do something funky. It says if F is before M, then I'm using an arrow, L is before H, right? So I'm not saying that F and M are coming before L and H. They're two separate things. I'm just saying if this thing over here happens, then this thing over there has to happen.
Okay.
Cool? Okay. Now, the reason I say this is going to be a little complicated is because we're going to do two things at once, and we've talked about neither before. The first thing I want to talk about is worlds. So when you're setting up a game, you can, in your initial setup, say, hey, I'm going to split this game into two paths or roads. And I'm going to go down these two separate roads. And you can do this if there are only two possible paths to go down. Or if there are three possible paths, then you'd create three paths. But in this particular situation, we can create two paths because there are only two possible ways to go here. One is for us to have a world in which F is before M. The other possibility is when M is before F. Right? Because this is an ordering game, a simple ordering game, those are the only two possibilities. Either F is coming before M or it's coming after M. There's no other way to do it, right? So I'm going to take this opportunity, I'm going to split this game into two worlds. One world in which F is before M, and one world in which M is before F. So that's first concept. Concept number 1 is I'm creating worlds. We've never talked about that before, we're talking about it now. Concept number 2 is we have if-then statements. We've never talked about that before. When you encounter an if-then statement in an ordering game, it's a good opportunity to get rid of it. Because if-then statements are annoying as whatever you want to say. They're annoying because you have to keep reapplying them, right? You have to ask yourself, oh, is F before M? Oh, if it is, then L has to be before H. But what if it's not? And what if L is not before H? Then I can't let F become before M, right? You have to deal with all this stuff. But if you create these two worlds, if you create a world where F is before M and you create a world where M is before F, in the world where F is before M, you can apply that rule and be done with it. And in the world where M is before F, what happens to the rule? It disappears, right? Who cares? The rule just says if F is before M, and you've just said, you know what, in this world M is before F, so that never happens. And if that doesn't happen, you don't care about the rule anymore. Because when it comes to if-then statements, if the if clause is not triggered, the rule is dead. It might as well not exist. All right. Okay, so if I was doing this game on my own, I would say, okay, here's an ordering game. I just drew the first two rules. I come to the third rule, and all of a sudden it says if. I glance at the last rule, which is not an if-then statement. So I'm like, I want to get rid of this if-then statement. I don't want to ever deal with it again. So right here and now, I'm going to create two worlds. One where f is before m, and one where m is before f. Now, I've written this up here for us, for clarity, but on the test, I wouldn't even do that. And you know what? We don't have a lot of space, so I'm actually not going to do that here. But if you want to take note to yourself, this is the world where f is before m, and this is the world where m is before f. You guys okay with that? Okay. Now, in the world where f is before m, notice we still have all of this. This always applies. So I'm going to say, okay, f is before m. Oh, this is going to be crowded. Well, anyways, do the best we can. F is before m, and because I know that f comes before g and k, I can link that in. I can say, okay, g, k, right? And we know that h comes before g, so I can go ahead and have h before g. Is everyone cool with this world? This is the world where f is before m. Now, before I go any further, I want to go over here and I want to go to this world, and I want to say, okay, this is the world where m is before f. Yeah, Thomas?
Can you run through that part one more time?
Sure. Okay, so this is the world where f is before m.
Okay.
Right? And so I wrote it down, and then I incorporated everything else I already knew. I already know that g has to come after f, and I know k has to come after g, and I know h has to come before g.
Okay.
So this is a nice web of chaos, but these are all the rules. Yes, Rachel?
L in before H.
Yes, I before I do that though, I want to go to the other world because I don't want to forget my, like when you start going down two paths or two worlds, you don't want to forget your initial assumptions. So I'm just going to start that too, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so in this world, m is before f, so this is a little easier. It's just going to be m before f, which is before g, which is before k, and we know that h is before g. Sound good? Is anyone confused about these two worlds or these two paths that we're going down? Okay. Now, excellent. We want to go back to this world for a second, because in this world, f is before m, and according to the rule, if f is before m, we know that l is before h. Right? So, here I have h, and I'm going to go ahead and write l before.
You said you do all this on the test, or you don't?
I would do all this on the
okay.
test. Yeah. There's things that I wouldn't do, like I wouldn't take time to write down the rule. I would just, right as I see the if-then rule, I'd split it into two worlds.
Okay.
I don't know that, I didn't even do it here, but like you could write FM and MF if you wanted to. I mean, you have a little more space on the actual test. But whatever you need to do to keep your mind organized and clear, but you also don't need to write down stuff that maybe you're just going to incorporate into your diagram, right? So I just incorporated the FM into my diagram, so I didn't need to write that down. I incorporated the MF into my diagram, so I didn't need to write that down. Other questions?
What do you do with the L? That's it. Like it's no longer
Yeah, I mean, L has to come before H in this world.
in that world.
In this world,
It doesn't.
doesn't matter, right? Okay, so in this world, I mean, we need to go through the rest of the rules, but if nothing else happens in this world, L is a floater, right? Because if this happens, then LH, but if this doesn't happen, I don't know what happens, so. Okay, so far so good? All right, now let's go to the next rule. Next rule says either M is earlier than H or it's later than K. Now, there's more to this, but not both. Let's just deal with the first parts first, right? So M is earlier than H or later than K. So M is earlier than H or later than K. M could be earlier than H if we move this FM thing up here. And it could be later than K. So it could be either one in this world. So I'm not going to worry about this world right now. Here, M is earlier than H or later than K. M could be earlier than H, but it could not be later than K, right? Because M has to come before K, right? Are you guys okay with this? So, in this world, it's saying, this last rule is saying to me, look, M has got to be before H or it's got to be after K. And I'm like, well, it can't be after K, so it has to be before H. To capture that, I'm going to go ahead and put a dash here to say, look, M is going to be before H in this world because there's no other way to do the other option. Why can't M be after K? Because M is before F, which is before G, which is before K. Cool? Okay. Jim? Is that Jim? Andy, where's Jim? Jim, hi.
Howdy.
You guys are far apart. My bad. Okay, anyways, so this rule is done now because it's telling me, hey look, you either have to have it earlier than H or later than K. I can't do later than K, so I've got to do earlier than H. It says but not both, and we don't have both here because we only have one. We have the situation where M is before H.
What about the other world?
Yeah, we'll get there. But this rule is, this world is done now, right? There's no more rules, so the only variable that's left is L. So in this world, L is a floater. Sound good? Okay. Now, in this world, we talked about how M could be before H or M could be after K. Boy, that's like, very different options. It can't be both at the same time. So, any guess what I'm going to do here? We create another world. One in which M is before H, and one where M is after K. And then I will have satisfied that rule and it can disappear. So, I'm going to give you an opportunity to try to do that on your own now. It's going to be a clusterfuck for some of us, but give it a go. Try to separate this world into two worlds. One in which M is before H, and one in which M is after K. It's going to be hard. Just give it a go. You'll get good at this in no time. Thomas?
I'm trying to figure out how to do it in my head.
That's okay. Just start with one piece at a time. If you need help, just go to a blank space on your paper and start with the initial assumption M before H and your initial assumption K before M, and then just start adding rules to that list. Okay? This is challenging, I know. We got this. All right, take a minute and show your diagram to your neighbor. If they seem confused, try to explain to them how you got it. I know it's not easy.
I made a line. I don't know how complicated I was going to get with it.
That's what I was
I didn't know if it was so I kind of made F. I only got you with M before H. I didn't get to
M
that.
was before H.
Yeah, M delivery is earlier than H, or my delivery is later. Now,
Yep.
M is earlier, or is later. Okay, so it's A. M. Oh, but anyway, for M or H, I put H, M, L, H, J, K.
Okay, that's M before H.
Yeah. Yes. Mine was. And it works for that one. F, J, K. H, J, G. What'd you get? I didn't really get to the K before. Oh,
I'm still trying.
Alright, I want to see if I can see if we work out the shape for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna accept it and make it real.
So,
Otherwise,
I feel like K before M, I'm gonna
So my garage is right past it, so I'm gonna go repark that.
Cool, man. How you doing?
L A
Okay, let's do this together. I moved these up so we have more space.
The lines confuse me greatly.
Yeah.
Let's give this a go, okay? So let's go ahead and start with the two options. Remember, this world is done. This world is done. We're going to take this world and we're going to split it into two worlds. One in which M is earlier than H, and one where it is later than K. Okay? So let's start with the one where M is earlier than H. I'm just going to write that down because that's what's going to happen in this world. I guess I'll do the other one over here. This is where it is later than K. So we have K, and then we have M later than K. Sound good? Those are the two options. We okay with this so far? This is my split. So we went down two roads, and then I went down this other road, and I decided to go down two more roads in this new world, right? Okay, so when M is before H, I come up here, and all this stuff is still true. I still know that F has to come before M, right? I'm just getting that from that right there. And we know that, look at this, H comes before G and it comes before K. So I'm going to go ahead and put G and K after it. And we know that L has to come before H, so I'm just going to say, okay, L has to come before it.
Okay.
Sound good? Are we okay with that? Now notice, some things you're like, wait a sec, F has to be before G, right? That's okay, that's embodied in this, because if F is before M and M is before H and H is before G, then F is going to be before G. So you don't need to write that rule twice because it'd be redundant. Sound good?
I get it.
Connor, you okay with this?
I got the exact same thing.
You got the exact same thing? Okay. That's how I'm feeling right now. Alright, so then let's go over to this one. I'm going to have to... This is my dividing line so we don't get confused here. The nice thing on the test is you have a little more space. But anyway, so we have K before M. No, we're looking back at this, right? Because this was our initial diagram. Ignore that. So we know that G is before K. So I'm going to go ahead and put G before K. We know that H is before G. And L is before H. Running out of space here. We'll go ahead and put it up here. So L is before H is before G, G is before K, K is before M. And we still have F before G and F before M. So if F has to be before M and it has to be before G, which one should I put it before?
G.
I'm going to put it before G because then it will be before both. Right? So I'm going to go ahead and put F here. Okay. So notice that in this setup, we have whatever it was, M before H, and this setup, we have M after K. We've created those two options. They told us it has to be one or the other, but not both. And we've created both of those and filled in the diagram. So this game now only has three worlds. This is the first world. This is the second world, but it was really split into two subworlds, right? Worlds 2 and 3. So, for clarity, I'm going to erase this so that we don't get confused. But basically, these last two worlds were just subworlds of this world, right? This world was split into this one and this one. So that's everything. Those are the only three ways that these variables can be arranged. You guys okay with this? Question?
So the worlds 2 and 3,
Uh-huh.
where there's two options, we don't really know exactly where they go. Can they be flipped like M before H and L before H? Does it matter?
You're talking about this like variable
Yeah,
right
like
here?
could you do L and M and then M and L?
Yeah, excellent. So this right here is telling me that L has to come before H, right? And this right here is telling me F comes before M, which comes before H, but it doesn't tell me anything about the relationship between these variables. So although L has to come before H, L could be between M and H, it could be between F and M, or it could be before all of them.
So when I did it, I just wrote it in one line. I didn't leave the possibility.
Yeah, so what you're doing is you're like narrowing the number of possibilities, and that's not necessarily true. It could be true,
Okay.
but it doesn't have to be true.
Okay.
Now here, sorry that this one's a little bit at an angle, but the same thing. F has to come before G, but it doesn't tell us anything about the relationship between F and L and H, so F could be between these two, or before L. Okay, so now we know everything about this game because these are the only three possibilities. Yes?
So the dash is indicating that F can be before G and or it has to be before G, K, and M, right?
Are you looking at this world right here?
Yeah, sorry, 3.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually that's true for all of them, right? Because H is before G and K, H is before G and K, H is before G and K. And that's just this rule right here is now embodied in all of them. But that's because that's something that's always true. Questions? Now, this is two hard concepts. First of all, we're talking about creating worlds, which we never talked about. Second of all, we talked about if-then statements and how they're a good opportunity to create worlds because you get rid of the if-then statements. But notice what happened. By creating these two worlds, we then had an opportunity to only draw what we needed to draw for the last rule, which is also a confusing rule, right? Now, this itself may have been challenging because even creating these was challenging, but as you get better at each one of these steps, creating worlds, getting rid of if-then statements, linking, ordering rules together, this can become extremely fast, right? So this is why it's important to focus on getting the questions right in the right way, even if it takes you 20 minutes, because maybe this takes you 20 minutes right now, but if you can do this, hopefully you can see how having this information can make this game go extremely fast. Yeah?
A question about worlds.
Yeah.
Do you have like a baseline or a standard of like, okay, 2 worlds, that's okay, 3 worlds, that's okay, is 4 too much? Like, in terms of how much time you're going to take up making those worlds?
Sure, that's a very good question. So when you're deciding whether or not to do worlds, you want to ask yourself how many would I have to create and how full would they likely get. The first question is generally easier. It's generally 2 to 4 worlds. But even then, there may be a situation where I only have to create 2 worlds, but they wouldn't be that helpful, so then I wouldn't do it. But another situation or another game in which I'd have to create 4 worlds, gee, that seems like a lot of work. But when I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, it would be really helpful to create those 4 worlds because they'd all be pretty full. In which case, even though you have to create 4 of them, you're going to go ahead and do it. So
it's not always the number.
It's not always the
how
number.
helpful and how full each of the worlds is going to be.
That's right. But it's kind of like this balancing act, right? The more worlds you have to create, the more helpful they better become.
Okay.
But at the same time, even when you only have to create 2, sometimes you're sitting there and you're saying, well, neither one is going to be that helpful, so I'm not going to do it. There are some general rules of thumb, though. One, if you can get rid of if-then statements, that's generally helpful, so you don't have to think as much about whether you should do it.
Right.
Another situation is where you have blocks of 2. We had blocks of 2 with the LM in the previous game. We didn't talk about worlds then because you would have had to create 4, and they didn't fill in that much, so it didn't make sense to do them, and I just didn't want to talk about it. But that's a situation where you would want to test it out because you'd say, oh, I got this block together. How many places can they really go? And it turns out in that previous game they can only go in 4 places. Another situation, well, blocks of 3 generally are very helpful. Also in the previous game, you noticed how J had to go in only 2 slots? So that's automatically 2 worlds, because right, either J is going to be 2 or J is going to be 6, I think it was, right? So you could create 2 worlds, and that's another thought. Should I create a world where J is 2 and another world where J is 6? Those are my only 2 options. I'm going down those 2 paths. The question then becomes, though, how helpful is that? At least in that game, it didn't seem that helpful, so I didn't do it, and we didn't talk about it because I didn't want to confuse things anymore. But now that we know about worlds, we're going to talk about it for every game because it's a decision you want to make in every game. You want to say, oh, should I do worlds here or not? I would say I do worlds for half the games.
Okay.
The co-host that I host the podcast with, Nathan, he says, trying to believe him, but he says he does worlds for 3/4 of the games. So, different folks, different ways of doing things. Okay, in any case, we have these 3 worlds. Let's give it a go. So, question 18. Here's one thing about worlds. Even though you may spend all this time creating worlds and you have these awesome worlds, in a lot of cases, the first question is just answered most effectively by elimination anyway. So we're going to ignore everything we just did and say FGK. Which ones does that get rid of? FGK is good in A, it's good in B, it's good in C, it's good in... It's not good in D, right? FGK, it's FKG. So D is out because of the FGK rule. FGK is fine in E. Now we have the HG rule. HG is fine in A, B, C. We don't care about D. How about in E? It's not good, right? Because it's GH. So that's going to get rid of E. We have this rule. If F is before M, L has to be before H. That is going to be a problem in A, right? F is before M, but H is before L. So we're going to get rid of A, which means we're now down to B and C, and we only have one rule left, the last rule, right? Either M is earlier than H or it's later than K, but not both. So it can only be one of those. In B, M is later than H and earlier than K. That's not good. It's neither one of them, right?
Wait, can you say?
Yeah, no problem. So I'm just looking at the last rule. It says M has to be earlier than H or later than K. And when I look at B, M is not earlier than H. M is later than H. So then that means it's got to be later than K, but it's actually earlier than K. So it was neither one of the options that they gave us. It's got to be one of them. So the answer can't be B, which means it's C. Sound good? Rachel? Cool? All right. That's 18. Now 19, if F is delivered fourth, I'm going to come over here and make room for these diagrams. I'm going to hijack this. 19. If F is fourth, okay. Which world are we not in? Are we in world 2?
No.
No, F could not be fourth. Could F be fourth here? No, it's got 3 things after it. It could only be in 1, 2, or 3. So we got to be in this world. And oh, by the way, if F is fourth, we have GK coming after it. We got that from the original rule anyway. But notice we have this other information. We now know that M is before H, and we know that L is a floater. So I'm going to go ahead and put M before H, because that's true in this world, and L is a floater. Advanced question for you. How many different scenarios are possible in this particular question? I hear a vote for 2.
Say 2.
Okay, how many people think 2? There are only 2 possibilities. Okay, any other nominations? 3? How many people think there are 3 possibilities? 3 possible arrangements of variables. Okay, about a third of us. Okay, how many people say 4?
4.
Okay. Okay, we're back to a fourth of us. There does not seem to be a lot of unity on this issue. So my question is, given the set of constraints we have for these 6 slots, how many different ways could you arrange these variables? Tell your neighbor why you think the number is whatever number you think it is, and then let's see if we can come to an agreement.
M has to be before H, right? So either M can go in slot 1A.
Yes. So either L can go.
You can't do HL.
Right? M goes 4 and goes L goes H.
L is a floater.
That's why I because L is a floater. And M has to go before H.
You guys come to agreement? Okay. You come to agreement 3? Yeah. Okay.
No, you're exactly.
All right, all right. You don't have to agree with your neighbor, even if you just talked with your neighbor. What's more important is that you stick with your conscience. So how many people say 2? 2 options. Okay? How many people say 3? Discussion has led us to this number. Okay, how about 4? All right, there's still some stragglers. There are 3 options. Focus in on L for a half second. L is the floater, right? If L goes first, then MH are going to be in 2, 3. If L goes second, then MH are in 1, 3. And if L goes third, then MH are in 1, 2, right? You focus in on the floater, everything else falls around the floater wherever it ends up going. And L can only go in 3 places. Those are the 3 possible arrangements. Now you may be wondering, Ben, it's not asking me how many different ways these variables could be arranged. Is anybody wondering that? Oh, good. I guess no one is wondering that. Sometimes people are very skeptical, like, Ben, why are you wasting my time with this? Because I want you to be able to do 10 times more than they request of you, so that then whatever they do request of you is super easy, right? That's our goal. You guys are going to be masters of this test in 3 weeks. Okay. Or at least the game section. Sound good? 3 weeks. Promise you that. Kind of. Okay, so we have L, 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 so there's 3 possible arrangements. Anyways, those are all the inferences we can make. We know we can't go any further because L is a floater and M and H are kind of loose, right? What question are we on? Oh, 19. Which one volume must be true? Well, the last inferences we made had to do with this stuff, but this stuff is kind of flexible, right? So I would think that my last inference was actually this one right here. The K is last. Because when we said F was here, we then said, oh, G has to come after it and K has to come after that. So I would scan the list for K. They don't have it. We also have, though, G is 5th. I see that. So the answer's got to be A. Sound good? All right. 20. If M is first and L is third, so this is 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. M is first, L is third. What world are we looking at if M is first and L is third? 1. I hear a vote from Jim for 1. Okay, how many people agree with Jim? Yeah, notice in this one, M cannot be first, M cannot be first, so this is the only one in which M could be first. If M is first, who's second?
F or H.
F or H, right? Because these two have to come after M. So this is F or H. And then notice that both F and H come before GK. That's going to force GK to go last. Are you guys cool with that? So we have GK, which just means this is F or H. You guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, which one volume must be true? Again, last inference is K is last. Do we have any that say that? Yes, we do have one that says K is last. But they don't even say K is 6th. That's weird. I would expect it to say K is 6th. But anyway, it says K is last. That's the answer, so the answer is E. Sound good? And notice they are trying to get us with answers A and B. They say F is second. It could be, but it could also be 4th. H is second. Same deal. It could be, but it could be 4th. H is 4th. Same problem, right? All right. Questions on that question? Okay, let's keep going. 21, skip. It's not if. 22, if K is earlier than L. If K is earlier than L, which world are we in? I hear a vote for first. And wait, what was your name again?
Oh, Jen.
Jen. How many people agree with Jen? Yep, we're in first because in this case, K is not earlier than L, it's later than L, and it's later than L. So we have to be here. If K is earlier than L, notice this L is a floater, so it's going to go behind K, right? Now, without doing any writing, if L comes behind K, tell me what has to be true in this world. I hear some people saying M has to be first. Yeah, do you guys see that without drawing anything? If you can see that without drawing, then you don't need to draw. You're good. You're done. L goes here. That's going to force M up in front. What's going to happen with F and H?
They're interchangeable again.
Yeah, they're interchangeable with what slots?
2 and 3.
2 and 3. Okay? And then that means G and K are in 4 and 5, right? Because L is in 6. Okay, sorry, I'm asking you to do this in your head because the goal with the games is to write down some, but then to the extent you can do the rest in your head, do it in your head because you'll get faster at this. Is there anyone who can't see it in their head right now? Because I want to fix it. Okay, so about a third of us can't. That's okay. So what I'm imagining in my head right now is this is what? This is 22, right? So for 22, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. L has to come after K, right? And if L has to come after K, there's nothing else in this list. So the front and the end are set, right? It's going to be M and L. Are you guys okay with that? Then F and H have to come after M, but they have to come before everything else is after it. So F and H are going to be going back and forth between these two slots right here, which gives us G, K. That's what I'm seeing in my head. Cam, you cool with that? Great. Okay, so which one I find could be true? Could F be first? Well, now that we have the drawing, we can just look at that. No. Could G be third? No. Could H be third? Yes. It could be third or second. So the answer is C. But if you saw that in your head, you actually wouldn't even have to draw that. You could just go. Okay. All right. Now we have to do the non-if questions. 21. Which one of the following must be true? Because it's asking us what must be true without any conditions. How do we have to use our worlds to answer this question?
It's true in all the
One.
It's got to be true in all of them. Because if it's a must be true, then that means it's always true. So it's going to be true in worlds 1, 2, and 3. Sound good? So, does F have to be earlier than L? No. Doesn't have to be earlier than L here, or here, or here, right? So that's definitely not something that has to be true. Does G have to be earlier than L? No, because L is a floater in this world, so it could go anywhere, so no. Done. Does H have to be earlier than K? Yes. 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 So the answer is C. All right. 23. Which one of the following must be false? In other words, which one of the following cannot be true? Right? The same thing. We just have to look at it can't be true in any of the worlds. Could F ever be first? Yes. So that's wrong. Could G ever be fifth? Yes. So that's wrong. I'm just looking, yeah.
Okay, so when you say like G can be fifth, the first thing my brain thinks is G is third. But how did you get?
Oh, so like in this world right here, like G could be fifth. In fact, in this world it is fifth.
Because you're slotting in the L in your brain and you're saying that bumps it to 5.
Yeah, like if I move L up here, then these are the last two slots.
Okay.
So they're 5 and 6. In this world, it's actually already set because these three are going to take up the last 3 slots.
Ah,
So this is going to be 6, 5, 4. So yep, G could be fifth, so this does not have to be something that is false. As long as it can happen once,
Oh, okay.
it's good. C, H is third. Could H be third? It can't be third here because it has 3 things ahead of it. It could be third here though, because we could do M, L, H, or we could do M, F, H. So because H could be third in world 1, this answer is wrong. You guys okay with that? Okay, let's keep going. How about L is second? Could L ever be second? In this world, L is a floater, so yeah, it could be second. Okay, done. So that could not be true. I mean, that could be true, so this is not the answer. E, M is fourth. Could M be fourth in this world? No, it's got 3 things behind it, so that's going to be 6, 5, 4. It could never be 4. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4 things behind it. It could never be 4. Here it's last, so it could not be 4. So M could never be 4 in any of these worlds, which means it's something that must be false. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Questions? Yeah.
Well, it's not related to this question, but
Yeah.
just going back to like 19,
Yeah.
in terms of like, because like G is fifth as like the first answer,
Yeah.
and you never referenced back to 19, like could you just
Oh, yeah, we could have just looked there. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Whether you see it here or see it wherever you see it first, you're like, oh, G could be 5.
No,
Done.
but like instead of doing all the work to figure out, because as soon as you put it in for 19, like G had to be GK, you didn't even have to fill out F and H or any of the rest.
Oh, you're talking about this stuff right here.
Yeah.
So, in general, earlier on in the game, I'm going to fill out more for 2 reasons. One, I don't necessarily know what they're going to ask me. Right? Like, you could fill out some of the work. look to see if the answer has been answered, and then say, oh, it has been, I'm done. But sometimes you do that and you're like, oh, I need to go further. And so then you continue to make inferences. So my general rule of thumb is to keep making inferences as long as I can make them quickly. As soon as I hit a wall, then either I've hit a wall because I'm not seeing another inference, even though there is one, or there really are no more inferences. But since it was fairly easy to keep going with this, I would keep going. Not only for that question, but also for future questions. Because now we have this diagram that tells us a lot. You remember that one question in the previous game that said, hey, tell me all the places that M could go, or K, or whatever? Well, this world right here is now going to be really helpful because you can look at it and say, well, M can go in what slots? 2 and 1, right? And you just have that information from that if question. So earlier on in the game, filling out your diagrams a little further can actually benefit you down the road. Now, sometimes it doesn't. We never ended up using it in this game, but a lot of times it does. All right, questions? Same deal as before. Bullet points. Write down as many as you can. What's at least one thing that you're going to do differently from games in the future? What's one takeaway from this game? Maybe it's the test for worlds. Maybe it's when you should create worlds. Maybe it's how you answer particular questions. Three bullet points. Oh, 4 bullet points over here. David, how many you got? 1. Good enough. 2. 4. 8. That's impressive. No, that didn't happen. Just hoping that you guys would get nervous and jealous and start writing more. Okay, tell your neighbor what you wrote down. See if there's anything you have takeaways that maybe they don't have, or vice versa.
That was good. Okay.
Thomas?
Yeah.
How's it going?
Pretty good.
Good? Okay. Good. You feel like it's making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
Makes sense. Just process. You got it.
Yeah. Laura? Good?
Pretty well so far.
Cool. Good, good.
Building my confidence.
Wait. Oh, you're building your confidence. Good. For a second, I thought you said losing. I was like, oh no.
I always take so long because I'm like, no, maybe that's not right.
Okay. Good. Good. Yeah. All right. So what are some of the things we're taking away or have questions about? Yes.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Players being with this and rule kind of like, I think they call it the contrapositive.
Yes, the contrapositive. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Do you do those? Do you split your world?
Yeah, we will talk about contrapositives. The thing about worlds is actually the contrapositive doesn't really apply because in one world you're saying the if clause is happening, in the other world you're saying the if clause is not happening, so the rule doesn't exist. And that is a mistake that a lot of people make. In this game, what was it? It was if F is before M, then L is before H, right? So what they do is they say, okay, F is before M, then L is before H, and they say, okay, in one world, F is before M, and in another world, M is before F, right? Those are my two worlds. And in this world, clearly, L comes before H. But in this world, they somehow think, oh, well, that means that H is before L. And that's a false contrapositive. That's not necessarily something that's true. So we don't even have to think about, in fact, thinking about contrapositives can kind of mess you up. You just want to say, if the if clause is not triggered, the rule dies.
Isn't there kind of the, like, if H is before L, then M is before
Absolutely. If H comes before L, then you can't have F before M, you have to have M before F, right? Like, if this doesn't happen, if H comes before L, then I better not let this happen. That's the contrapositive. In which case, M would be before F. But notice that in this world, when F is before M, we are having L before H. And in this world, M is before F, so we don't care about whether or not this ends up being LH or HL. Because if it is HL, this is already true. And if it's LH, it doesn't matter, because if this is true, this is not necessarily true, right? You can't go backwards. You can't say if A, then B, therefore if B, then A. You don't seem convinced.
I'm good.
You're
And
no.
I've seen
You,
some
we
questions.
wait. No, we gotta clear. This is a big deal. This is what the LSAT's all about for some strange reason. So, Rachel, what are you still
Well,
confused
just
about?
because there is something that's true, right? Like if H is.
If H is before L, you're absolutely right. Then
And
M
here's
has
that
to be before
picture
F.
again.
Yeah, that's okay.
So if H is before L.
Yeah, if it is, then we have to be in this world right here, right?
Okay.
But the mistake I don't want you to make is that because you're in this world, you have to have H before L. That's not necessarily true. It could be L before H. So the best way to think about it is that I'm either in a world where F is before M, and therefore the rule is triggered, and I know that L is before H. Or I'm in this world, M is before F, and the rule just goes away. I don't care whether L is before H or H is before L, because if H ends up coming before L, which would require M to come before F, it's okay because it already is. Another way to think about this, and we'll get back to this again, but if the necessary condition of an if-then statement has been satisfied, then you don't care about the rule. So what you're really looking at here is you're saying, look, if H is before L, then M has to be before F. And in this world, the necessary condition has already been met, so we don't care whether or not the if clause happens. We don't care whether H comes before L or L comes before H. You still feel like there's something here.
I do, but it's okay.
Okay, let's talk more at the break.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions? Comments? Takeaways? One. Just need one.
Must be true, needs to be right in all the worlds.
Must be true, needs to be right in all the worlds. Anything else?
How do you know if a world will be full when you're trying to decide whether or not to set up worlds?
How do you know whether a world will be full when you're...
Or towards the fuller end, like if it's a useful.
Yeah, so there, you don't know for sure, but there are some general rules of thumb. One, if you split a diagram on the basis of a rule or a letter that is in more than one rule, it's probably a good move. Because the more rules that a letter is in, the more of an impact it's going to have as soon as you make an assumption about that letter. Now notice, in this one we said if F is before M or if M is before F, and F was already in another rule. Remember there was that rule that said F is before G and before K. So it's like, as soon as I make this assumption, I'm able to already bring in other assumptions or other rules. So it's probably going to fill out. Okay? Any other questions or comments or takeaways? Yes?
If you're doing world for a second time, then you can like get rid of the first world and just keep like the sub-worlds?
Yes.
So minimize how many worlds there are?
Yeah, because you just want the stuff that you actually need, right? So if you take a world and you split it into two subworlds, what happens in practice in generally is you take the original world and you make it one of your subworlds, and then you just add one more subworld. Does that make sense? Cool. All right. Any other questions? We're good. Okay.